everyone, and welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. On today's show, it is November, and that means Financial Literacy Month here in Canada. This year marks the 15th anniversary of Financial Literacy Month. The theme this year is Talk Money, and the aim is to encourage Canadians to talk openly about finances and help break the stigma around money conversations. Because after all, open conversations lead to stronger financial confidence and therefore, of course, improved financial health. Now, joining me to talk about Money Matters is Carolyn Goodwin, Senior Manager of Social Impact at the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. Carolyn, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I'm working on the operations of the financial literacy portfolio since 2022. And here at CPA Canada, of course, our foundational value is serving and protecting the public. So I'm really happy to be here to talk about money, as we know that we want to foster some public confidence with the profession, and we develop these programs to promote and advocate for public policy to serve consumers and businesses and organizations across the country. We also want to address the growing social problem of financial literacy here in Canada, and we have developed some free education on financial literacy right from the grassroots level. So let's talk about money.
Yes, absolutely. I love that because, of course, it's Financial Literacy Month. And of course, as I mentioned, it is the 15th annual here in Canada. So since 2011, the federal government has been focused on improving the financial knowledge and skills of Canadians. And Carolyn, improving our financial knowledge is really key to our financial health.
For sure. I mean, we think about going to the gym and getting a personal trainer. If we have a problem with our health, we go to the doctor, and really we don't actually spend enough time talking to financial planners or talking to our bank person or whoever it is that can talk to us about money. So I think talking about money this month and all year round is super important for not just our mental health, but of course, our financial health.
And I completely agree with you. And I think the topic or the theme of this year is Talk Money. And I think it's a really important theme because we know that talking about money can be difficult. We label these conversations sometimes they're impolite or they're unprofessional, or of course they can be very uncomfortable. So Carolyn, first of all, why do you think it's so difficult to just talk about money?
I think people are just reluctant. They, like you said, they think it's inappropriate or impolite. And also we're faced with a lot of different cultures, and some cultural norms or family dynamics often actually discouraging open financial conversations. And probably those are the people that need to be having those conversations the most because they have some insecurities. And on the flip side of that, those that do talk about money might not because they have a fear of being judged, or they might maybe have some embarrassment over too much debt. They have a gambling problem, shopping addiction. All of these things can make people really hesitant to speak up. And money, we know, is just so deeply tied to identity and self-worth. And it's really an emotionally charged topic.
Yeah, the people that I meet with on the regular basis, many of them, and this always surprises me, but many of them will say, I've been putting off this phone call, I've been putting off this conversation with you for over a year. And it's disappointing, I feel like, because we could have maybe helped them out of the situation so much earlier if they had sort of made that phone call sooner rather than later, basically as soon as you think that you need to have a conversation. And maybe sometimes it's not necessarily a conversation about your overwhelming amount of debt. Maybe you just need help with managing the finances. Like you say, talking to your banker, talking to a financial advisor, learning how to take advantage of maybe the money that you're earning. So I think it's disappointing that there's so much of a reluctancy to talk about money, but hopefully as we get this out into the community, people will maybe take that step moving forward, because we know that having those open discussions about money is so important. It has lots of benefits. Being financially knowledgeable empowers you to make informed financial decisions. It achieves stability. You avoid maybe those debt traps. And studies show that since Financial Literacy Month was launched 15 years ago, Canadians have seen their financial literacy skills improve. And we've even had some of the highest financial literacy levels in the world. Back in 2017, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development ranked Canada third in financial literacy. Now, unfortunately, there has been a little bit of a shift in recent years since the pandemic, with inflation, deteriorating job prospects, maybe the lack of budgeting. There's been some global economy issues, and Canadians are feeling it a little bit more these days. And it's really impacted, I think, the confidence that a lot of people are feeling. And the latest research from Statistics Canada, fewer Canadians believe they're financially knowledgeable, only 47%. And that's considerably lower than the 61% that were feeling confident back in 2018. So, Carolyn, with this decrease in our feeling of confidence, it seems it's such a big decrease in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and it's concerning, right? It means that more than half of Canadians don't have the education or literacy to make informed decisions, or even to maybe ask the right questions that can impact them today and into the future. And I'm thinking like this drop is probably reflective. Well, I think we know it's reflective of the impact of inflation, job insecurity. I think I saw yesterday like 800,000 people are now without jobs this time last year. That's huge, right? And then, the pandemic, it's it's been 5 years, but we still have pandemic related financial strain. Canadians that have a lower confidence about their money, they avoid financial planning. Like you mentioned, you talk to them, or they said they should have called you last year and now it's another year. And Financial Literacy Month has been going on for 15 years, and we talk about it. Actually, it's great that we talk about it just before the holiday season because it's November. But yeah, people are avoiding financial planning. That means they're probably increasing their debt because they're just like closing their eyes and saying, I need to live, I need to buy groceries. But that also means that they're missing out on opportunities for growth and growing any little money that they could squirrel away. So it's really a signal that we need to re-engage Canadians with accessible, judgment-free financial education.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of barriers that some people are facing. I mean, we already mentioned it's uncomfortable to talk about money. We feel that maybe we're supposed to know all of these things when we go in and talk to our financial advisor, and we don't want to feel maybe stupid or anything like that. And you mentioned too about maybe some cultural barriers that people are feeling. And as well, you also mentioned about maybe there's just a limited amount of professional advice in that person's area or something like that. So there's a lot of these barriers that people are facing. And I think it's really important to try to communicate out to the community that even if you are feeling uncomfortable, if you're going to see someone who is a financial professional, whether it is a financial planner or advisor or a licensed insolvency trustee like myself, there are no questions that you can't ask that the advisor isn't able to answer for you. And I think that's really important because we all want to know what's happening with our money, right? We want to be able to have that control. And so I think there's really big advantages about going to those professionals to talk about that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we need to remove some of those barriers. We need to figure out ways that people aren't prevented from growing their financial knowledge. And it's probably harder today than it was even 5 years ago because there's so much noise on the internet. And some of the news that we listen to, the influencers or the finfluencers that are out there, how do we differentiate between what's real and what could be fake or could actually be a scam? And some people are finding it so hard to save money. The last thing we want them to do is to lose those little bit that they have saved, or when they're trying to make the right step, they've now invested with the wrong person or place. So, sure, people are talking about money, but are they doing it in the right context? Or are they getting into those getting rich quick schemes and they end up losing more money than they should and even getting into a worse situation? So I think it has to be a sense of caution with who you're talking to, but a good place to start is with those organizations that have the credibility behind them. So like BDO, the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada, your big banks, your advisors, because we want to continue to see that all the barriers for financial literacy are kind of removed. And we don't want people to feel awkward and ashamed discussing money, especially their debt and their financial struggles. We don't want people to look at them and say, oh, they've got some issues. Here, let me see if I can take some more away from them. So I think it's really important to have access to those trusted financial advisors and then know where to start. If you seek help, it's not a sign of failure. It actually should be viewed as a strength. You are actually starting to take control, just like you would if you were trying to take control of your fitness, or you're going to the gym, or if you want to take control of your eating habits. You might join some or meet with a dietitian. It's the same concept. It's just when it talks about money, there's just like a whole level of like barriers there that aren't there with other things in life.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was described to me once that you want to take advantage of your toolbox, and that toolbox is the people that you have access to talk to. You're going to go see your lawyer if you have legal issues. Like you mentioned, you're going to go see somebody, your doctor, about your health. Why isn't it more acceptable to go and talk to someone about your money health? There is this disconnect, it feels like, which is really unfortunate. And then you mentioned too about those online influencers that we see on social media. It's unfortunately has made it easier for people to rely on internet information as truth instead of going someplace that is more credible, and causing that shift, or maybe um, showing people that there are resources out there to go to, I think is really important. You mentioned about avoiding those scams maybe online that these influencers are maybe advertising. You might get caught up in something that you don't really understand, but you trust the advice that you're given. So all of that is very challenging. So I appreciate that information that you were able to give. And of course, we know that research shows that having those real conversations is really key to growing our financial knowledge and our skills. And so the question is going to become, how are we able to turn this around? How can we get more Canadians to talk money so they can grow their financial knowledge and their know-how, pardon me. And so Carolyn's going to have some really great advice for us when Money Matters returns after the break. Welcome back to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. My guest today is Carolyn Goodwin, Senior Manager of Social Impact at the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. And today we're talking about the growing our financial literacy knowledge and skills. And of course, that's a timely topic because it is November and is the 15th annual Financial Literacy Month here in Canada. The theme this year is Talk Money, and it focuses on encouraging Canadians to have real conversations that will help them grow their financial knowledge. Now, before we break, we talked about some of the challenges and the stigmas that deter these discussions, and they are, of course, a real concern. So, Carolyn, just starting off, what is your advice on pushing past these barriers so that we can have more comfortable conversations about money?
Well, I would start with trying to normalize these money conversations in everyday life, whether that's at home, with your friends, or even in the workplace. Look for opportunities to ask questions and see what others have done to save money or reduce their expenses. People sometimes like to give advice. So just leaning into when a topic comes up, try to wind it to, well, how are you doing this? How are you affording, the groceries these days? Anybody have any tips? And that could evolve into something else. leaning into these conversations rather than shying away from them, you may actually find that so many others actually have the same questions and concerns as you do. In fact, I bet 50% of them do. We just heard earlier that more than 50% of Canadians are less knowledgeable when it comes to financial literacy. Here at CPA Canada, we promote financial literacy programs that are inclusive, culturally sensitive, and easy to access. So any organization, school, library, or company can request a financial literacy session from our website. We have over 34 different topics in both French and English. This opportunity gains access to all of this financial knowledge and the opportunity to even speak with the CPA volunteer that will be presenting this material. So educating yourself will give you the confidence to then do something about your situation. It's all about let's talk about money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Can you walk us through some of the benefits or some more benefits maybe about having those open conversations about money?
Well, I think that some of the benefits of talking about money, it really helps you to understand that it really isn't a you problem. It's everybody's problem. Like we all have questions about money. Even people who know a lot about, their own budgets and where the money's coming or where their money's going. They might even have some tips that you can share with them on, where you buy your groceries. Or, I just learned the other day, if you show up at Costco at 8:30 in the morning, you can get the night before's roasted chicken for like $5.99 instead of $7.99. So simple examples like that. It's no problem to throw that in your freezer, and it could be a couple of meals the next week, and it's good protein. So just very simple things like that. We should just really start having those basic conversations, because those small dollars can add up to big savings for other things, or can really start to generate the ideas on how we can really start to leverage what we already do in our everyday life to save money and to help others, and then they might have some tips for you.
And as for having a little bit more control over our knowledge of about our finances, can that have any effect on our stress levels?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's a direct correlation to whether or not you can pay your bills and how anxious you are about just getting out the door in the morning with your kids. I mean, it's just this overwhelming problem in society that when we can't afford things, everything then becomes really hard to do. Every decision we make, it's like, well, the price of gas is, I could go and visit my mom this weekend, but you know what? It might cost me 20 or $30 in gas for that round trip. You then start actually granularly making those kind of decisions, whereas before you may never have even thought about them. So I think it really does bring up the stress levels for everyone involved.
And what about the sort of effects on our relationships?
Yeah, I mean, when we sometimes we can't even talk to our partners about money, right? Or you hear about people who they have secret credit cards, which puts them further into debt. I mean, you must see that every day in your practice where people have kind of gone around and skirted behind things, or maybe they haven't got another credit card, but now they're borrowing money from family and their partner doesn't know about it. And then if the other partner is also doing that, it just becomes this snowball of compounded problems that can really grow into a bigger problem if you don't just sit down and just be real. Talk about your money, come up with a plan together, talk to your family on, what you can do or not do, and maybe just say no to some things because we just can't afford it right now.
Yeah, and I think having those discussions, becoming or getting more on the same page, especially with your partner, you start to get that feeling of empowerment moving forward. Um, you start to be able to maybe put some positive plans in place. Um, you start to set maybe some financial goals for yourself. It can all have a positive impact because, like you mentioned, you're probably not in this alone. In fact, you are not in this alone. Like you say, half of the population is feeling exactly the same way about their finances. And so increasing or improving those conversations we can have not only with perhaps other professionals, but you say within your family or within your workplace, I think it would definitely have a benefit because we tend to take advice from the people that we trust. And those are the people that are around you, right?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, we can actually even talk to our older generation, talk to our parents. You know, I think of my own parents. They're now in their 80s. You know, they've been around a long time. Just imagine what they went through during the 60s and 70s and 80s. You know, sometimes we sit in our life and we think, "Oh, well, we have it so bad." But you know, they had their struggles too, and they had to overcome them. But maybe they've forgotten or they haven't shared that wisdom or what they did, the good choices that they made to get through those high interest rates back in the 80s, you know, or you know, think about it, there weren't the tariffs that we had or did have up until Trump came in. So, you know, buying jeans back in the 80s probably cost you over $100 for your Levi jeans or your running shoes. You know, so sometimes we take things for granted that in this generation, everything should be cheaper or but they had problems too. So maybe just going back and talking to your older generation, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and get some advice from them. What did you do to get through those terrible times or those less lucrative times in your lifetime? Maybe it wasn't the housing problem, but there was certainly other constraints that they had.
Absolutely. There, other generations are definitely such a valuable resource for us. So I appreciate you mentioning that. So let's get into maybe how individuals can find other resources to help them with their financial literacy. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, even, you know, as I mentioned earlier at CPA Canada, we have the financial literacy sessions that organizations can request right on our website. There's also podcasts out there. You know, we talk about reputable organizations. You know, podcast is sort of an extension of a lot of places. So look at those reputable organizations like the banks and different influencers that you're following that are actually designated and check out some of their podcasts. I mean, even CPA Canada, we have a podcast called Mastering Money. We have over 9 seasons of educational material that is very evergreen and where you can consume that wherever you want to listen. So just going out there and looking for things that are easier for you to consume so that you can get educated. Sometimes it's easier just to listen while you're on the bus or in the car. And sometimes you don't want to listen to the advice of your family. Let's be honest. Yeah, I'm just saying we should go to our parents or grandparents. But then sometimes there's the stigma comes from around that. But maybe talking to, you know, your friend's parents or your friend's grandparents, it kind of takes that little bit of arm's length away and it allows for more open conversations.
Any cost effective resources maybe at our local libraries?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I I don't go to the library often because I tend to use the Libby app, but every time I go there, I notice like on their boards, they have, you know, sessions that they offer, they bring in organizations or they advertise other organizations that you can look at their board or just talking to other people that also are at the library. You can become friends with people. It's just a really great place to go to start. And even talking to the librarians, I'm sure they have all of these organizations coming to them wanting to promote, you know, what's out there. Some of these things are free. So when you're in a financial difficulty, you don't want to be spending the big dollars to try to get yourself back into a place that you need to be. Sometimes you can start off with some of these free materials, but just check to make sure that they are credible.
And I'm sure you're familiar with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada.
Yes. Oh, their website. Absolutely. In fact, even for myself, I have to remember that they have some really powerful tools on there. They have budgeting tools. If you just go to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, Google it. It's easy to find and start using some of the tools that are right there. Then you know that they're legit because they come from the Canadian government. So there's an opportunity for you to use those tools to better understand, you know, mortgage payments or how much it costs to borrow a car. There's some tools you can put the numbers in there, and it will punch out what that will cost you.
And I absolutely agree with you. There are two resources that I give my clients on a regular basis. And one of them is the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada's website. I have found that it is really excellent on giving a lot of detailed information. So I point people to that website all the time. And I also, of course, point people to our own BDO website, bdodebt.ca, where we also have a debt to income calculator. We have a budgeting tool, and there's a lot of good blog posts on there that give a lot of good advice about really common questions that people are facing. So there's a lot of great free resources out there for people to tap into that are trusted resources. And I think that's really important. So I appreciate that information that you were able to give us. And now, as we wrap up the show, Carolyn, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers and advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we just break it down into ages, right? If you're between the age of 18 to 34 and you're listening to us today, you really just want to build a financial foundation. Start now, open a budgeting app, track your spending for a month, even a year. You don't have to do anything, just start tracking, see where your money's coming, see where it's going, and start with one or two financial goals, whether it's saving $500 even. And if you're in the ages of 35 to 55, start taking control to plan ahead. Review your financial plan. And if you haven't started one, create one and schedule conversations with your partner or a financial advisor this month. Don't wait till next November when we talk about money again. And for those of you that are over the age of 56 or older, start having those money talks with your family. Discuss your wills, retirement income, financial wishes. Start talking about money.
All great advice, Carolyn. Thank you so much. How can people connect with you?
Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and also head over to cpacanada.ca/financial literacy, and you'll be able to request a financial literacy session today.
Thank you so much for being here again, Carolyn. Really appreciate your great advice. And I also want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Until next time, I'm Shannon Jackson.